Welcome back, Original Video. Today we are back with an NFL tier list video. This time we'll be doing a kind of ranking prediction on every single team in the league going into this coming NFL season. Now I'm going to do one for July, which is right now, and then also another one in August, just in case, any other free agents get signed, because Zeke's still not signed, Fournette's still not signed. There's still a few other guys too, which it's probably not going to make a big difference wherever they go, but I do want to make one where the rosters are pretty much final. So call this version 1 of 2, basically. This is one in July, we'll do one more in August. But yeah, I'm excited to get into this. Now, our tiers for today are Super Bowl contender, deep playoffs, barely make/miss playoffs, 5 to 7 wins-ish, and then Caleb Williams. For those of you that don't know, Caleb Williams is like the projected number 1 or 2 pick in next year's NFL draft. So that's worst of the worst. Why does it keep making me have to type in that tier box for some reason? Anyway, so I want to explain a couple things here though. So deep playoffs, I mean probably like NFC, AFC championship by that. Divisional, I guess technically if it's a wild card team and they win and then go there, I guess it's kind of a deep playoff push, but probably no divisional teams are going to make that. That's mostly NFC championship, AFC championship tier right there. Barely make/miss playoffs. Now those are teams that are kind of on the bubble. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then 5 to 7 wins-ish are like, you didn't really come close to make the playoffs, but you also weren't like bottom of the league either. So that's why I said 5 to 7 wins. That's kind of like a, I don't know, ballpark of what teams are going to be around for that tier. But yeah, so first off is the 49ers. Now the 49ers, I like a lot going into this year. I actually did a video on their whole quarterback situation right now with Brock Purdy and Trey Lance and Sam Darnold. Obviously their defense absolutely incredible. So in my opinion, the 49ers are a Super Bowl contender, 100%. I think they could have been there if Brock Purdy didn't get hurt. I'm not saying they would have beat the Eagles, but it definitely would have been way more of a game than what it was. I love that offense too with McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. I mean, they have so many great weapons. Big fan of the 49ers, so they're going there. Next, the Chicago Bears. Now, the Bears are one of those teams where they're going to be exciting to watch, but I don't think that's exactly going to translate to, good, if that makes sense. I mean, barely make/miss playoffs, I think, is probably their ceiling. But in my opinion, they're going to be about 5 to 7 wins-ish. I think it's definitely going to be a step up from next year, but it just doesn't all happen overnight. You have to have a few seasons of building that up, building momentum, filling up those holes in the roster. I love Justin Fields, obviously, and them getting DJ Morris is, finally true. Wide receiver number 1. A proven receiver. Moore gets a great quarterback with Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields gets a little bit too much hate. I think he's just kind of scratching the surface of what he can be. So I'm a big fan of him, what he can do. But I do think 5 to 7 wins is probably where the Bears are going to fall next year. Next is the Bengals. Now, the Bengals, I'm going to start with the good things. Their offense is one of the best in the league. Joe Burrow, you have Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. And then they drafted Chase Brown's backup running back. And they also signed Irv Smith from the Vikings at tight end in the offseason. Now, the bad things is their defense. They did lose both starting safeties, Jesse Bates and Von Bell. And even if you're a Bengals fan, you have to acknowledge that is not good. You never want to lose 2 of your starting safeties in the same offseason. That's just, not good, like I said. But I think overall, the Bengals are a great team. The one thing they have going for them is they do have Dax Hill, who they drafted the year prior, for safety, so he can fill at least one of those spots. I'm honestly not sure who their other one is to replace Von Bell, because I believe Jesse Bates replaced Dax Hill, but could be wrong there. But I think overall, the Bengals have a great defensive scheme, and their defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo, is phenomenal. So I do think they're still a Super Bowl contender, but they're going to need some help in that secondary. Someone's going to have to step up, and I'm sure someone will, like Kieran Taylor-Britt, who seems to be like a very good corner, very young. I think it's just his second year going into. So I like the Bengals still, definitely Super Bowl contender. Next is the Bills. Now, I've mentioned this in my Josh Allen individual video, which also, by the way, I will be doing videos on every single one of these teams more in-depth, predicting their actual record and stuff going into this year. We'll be doing that in a few weeks when we finish up our player prediction series, so just be on the lookout for that too, because this will be way more in-depth with each individual team getting their own video. I'm trying to keep it more, fluid and on pace for this video, so it's not like, way over an hour long, but next is the Bills. Now, like I said, as I mentioned in my Josh Allen video, the narrative for the Bills and Josh Allen kind of started to, shift last year whenever they started to struggle, and then it was like, oh, are they overrated? Oh, are they this? And then they go to the playoffs to get stomped at home, and it was just a very unfortunate end of the season. Josh Allen dealing with that elbow injury. They lost defensive guys early in the year, like Micah Hyde, and then they lose Von Miller. So they were not 100%. I think the Bills' hate is grossly over the top. I will say, in my opinion, I do think Burrow is on that tier with Josh Allen, or maybe he's second best in the league behind Mahomes. I don't think Allen is a better quarterback. Probably a hot take. I'm going to get some hate for it from the Bills fans. I know. I'm sorry. I guess we'll see this year. But I just think Burrow is more careful with the ball, and it translates to more points sometimes. But that's just my opinion. But overall, though, still, the Bills, I think, are a Super Bowl contender. I think the hate is just too far, honestly. Like, they're a great team. And, you're never hated that much unless you have something going right. And the Bills had a lot of stuff going right, and that's why they got so much hate, because they were starting to crumble. I think they bounce back this year and have a great year. Next is the Broncos. Now, the Broncos are a very tough team for me to rank, in my opinion, because I want to put them in barely make/miss playoffs with a huge Russ bounce back year, but it's just not realistic, in my opinion. It's just not. The AFC is too loaded. You have in extremely competitive divisions like the AFC North with the Bengals and the Steelers and the Rams and the Browns, and you have divisions like the one they're in with the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Raiders and the Broncos. In my opinion, it's just not going to be close to like that playoff push. I just don't think it's going to happen. So in my opinion, I do think they look better than last year, but they just have too much going against them as far as other teams to compete with. I think their defense is phenomenal. I do think Russ will bounce back, but I think it's just very unfortunate outside circumstances with their strength of division, and it's going to be tough. So I'm going to say probably around just 5 to 7 wins for the Broncos, but definitely an improvement from last year. Next is the Browns. Now, the Browns are another team that's very kind of interesting to rank, because last year we got to see Deshaun Watson, but not really, because he hadn't practiced in like over a year, hadn't played in over a year, hadn't practiced for too long either, new team, new coach, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's very unfair to rate Deshaun Watson off of last year, because that was such a whatever year. He suspended for like 12 games anyway. So I think the Browns will be better. But like I said, it's kind of like the Broncos. It's going to be incredibly competitive with their division, the AFC. But overall, I could see the Browns barely missing the playoffs. I don't want to say make. I think they barely missed the playoffs, kind of like on the bubble where they need a few things to happen. Or maybe they just, don't win that one. I think the Browns are going to be up there. They had a sneaky good offseason with some big defensive additions. And, Nick Chubb now has the backfield all to himself. I honestly think it's probably for the better. He's absolutely incredible, and I think he will be a huge focus on that offense, because he was kind of, splitting carries with Kareem Hunt. Now it's just all him, Jerome Ford behind him, Deshaun Watson, they got Elijah Moore, they got Amari Cooper. They have a very good offense. I think they're going to be a threat, but, again, a lot of competition around. I don't think they're as good as the competition above them, in my opinion. Next is the Buccaneers. As a division rival, I have been waiting to talk about this one. I'm saying the Buccaneers are like Caleb Williams bad. I don't know if that's like a hot take or not, but have you guys seen the video of Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask having their QB battle? Because the only battle going on was who can complete a pass first. It's an embarrassing video. I'm not going to lie. And I'm going to kind of, throw some shade, because I don't like the Buccaneers. I'm sure Buccaneers fans are going to throw shade at me too, because I'm a Panthers fan. But, it was literally like Baker Mayfield throws the ball way over the guy's head, and then Kyle Trask way out too far to the side. I think the only catch in that clip I saw was like a one-handed grab from the tight end that Trask threw, and it wasn't even that accurate. And I think also that defense is still pretty good, but just not that Super Bowl tier defense that they had a few years ago. I think the Buccaneers are going to be very bottom of the division. Unfortunately, though, if they actually end up landing Caleb Williams, might be good the following year, which I'm not going to think about right now, but I'm putting them down that bad. And I'm putting the Cardinals down there as well, speaking of the Cardinals have, and I talked about this in the Kyler Murray video I did, they have a lot going against them. Kyler Murray's out for a few weeks in the season. You don't have DeAndre Hopkins anymore. You have a new head coach, which, hopefully for the best. You don't have J.J. Watt anymore. You don't have Byron Murphy anymore. It's not looking good. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not looking good. You do draft, I believe it was Paris Johnson to help protect Kyler, which, that's definitely good. You got to start somewhere, but there's just not enough weapons in my opinion. Marquise Brown is incredible, and he was having a great year until he hurt his foot. And I do like Rondale Moore, but there's just too much going on, in my opinion. They're going to be toward the bottom. But next, the Chargers. Now the Chargers, I'm gonna keep it real with you. I took Herbert in a lot of my fantasy drafts last year, and he kind of disappointed. Which I know it's fantasy football. They don't care, whatever, whatever. But I'm just saying he had a bit of a down year. I do not think that happens again. He was struggling with injury to his ribs. I'm not sure how long that lasted for, but I'm sure that happened, or I guess he struggled with it for longer than what they let on, because just because players aren't listed as like questionable or probable, that doesn't mean that they're not dealing with an injury. Because as soon as week 1 ends, players are hurting to some degree the rest of the season. That's just how it goes. So whether it's hurting very badly or just the normal kind of football pain you have throughout the season, I think Herbert's was on a bit of a bigger scale with his ribs, and I'm not sure when it would have got better for him. But obviously that playoff game is rough. I mean, you're up 27-0, and I get it. Herbert doesn't get a lot of the blame in it. I agree. I think, in my opinion, he has to get at least some blame because your defense forces 5 turnovers. You have to keep your foot in the gas. You have to keep scoring. Like, there's no way. I don't know. I'm not blaming Herbert, but it's a team game, and a certain part of the blame does fall on him. And I'm sure he knows that too. And again, I do think because of the division they're in, it's very difficult for the Chargers to have this phenomenal year. But they do always play the Chiefs well. I wouldn't be shocked if they steal one off of them this coming year. And I think the Chargers, especially Herbert, bounce back pretty well. You draft Quentin Johnson, and you still have Keenan Allen, you still have Mike Williams. And I think the defense is going to be back in more, obviously healthier, but I think they're also going to be just better than we were last year because injuries weighed them down so much. So I'm saying barely make playoffs for the Chargers. I think it's going to be a tough one because they have to play the Chiefs twice a year and the Raiders, which is pretty competitive sometimes. So I am going to say barely make the playoffs. I think it's going to be a good year for the Chargers, but, I don't want to say deep playoffs, to be honest. But next to the Chiefs, I'm not sure how much time I'm going to spend on this, to be honest with you. They have Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Super Bowl contenders. I'm not sure what else I'm really supposed to say at this point. Like, everybody knows Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. Travis Kelce is like a cheat code at tight end. They have a young secondary that played, honestly, pretty well. They ended up winning a Super Bowl last season. Isaiah Pacheco looks great on offense. And now they have Kadarius Toney. So, I don't know. Moving on. Super Bowl contender. Next are the Colts. The Colts are a more exciting team to talk about because they have Anthony Richardson, a new head coach. And honestly, I know I've even talked to people on Twitter about this, that like the Panthers should have taken Anthony Richardson. And in my opinion, no, because he was not the right pick because the Panthers traded up to 1. If the Panthers traded up to like 4 or even 3 like he was taken, or no, he was taken 4th or whatever, like then it would have been the right pick, but you can't take a prospect that raw first overall. I'm sorry, that's just my opinion on it. But if he falls to you at like 4, like what happened to the Colts, I think it's great value because he has all of the physical attributes to be an incredible quarterback in the league. You have a new head coach who is coming over from the Eagles, who helped even coach up Jalen Hurts, and look how much he's improved. So I think it's definitely possible. You have Michael Pittman. You drafted Josh Downs out of North Carolina. I cannot remember their tight end's name for the life of me, so I'm really sorry about that. But yeah, you also have Jonathan Taylor, obviously, too. And honestly, I'm a big fan of that Colts offense. You lose Isaiah Rodgers and those guys for the whole gambling thing, which is, very annoying that you'd even risk that in the NFL with all the money you're already making. But definitely tough, and it's definitely a decent loss for them, losing Isaiah Rodgers on defense. But I do think the Colts are going to be a pretty good team. They're not in the toughest division in the world, so a big leap could actually make them compete for first place with the Jaguars, in my opinion. So I am going to put the Colts in 5-7 wins. I think they'll be competitive and it'll be exciting, but not really make/miss the playoffs. They're in the AFC. You got to be a lot better than that to almost get in there or even get in at all. So they're going to be 5-7 wins, in my opinion. Next is the Cowboys. So the Cowboys are going to go in deep playoffs. I think that's like just where they belong most years because they are a good team, but they're just never good enough to make the next step and actually get to the Super Bowl. They're just never able to do it. Dak gets a lot of hate. Some of it's deserved, some of it's probably not, but he does collapse a lot. But on the bright side, you have an incredible defense, one of, if not the best in the league. Definitely there's a case for the best in the league. And now you get Stephon Gilmore, too. Only out of the secondary. Great pickup. CeeDee Lamb in offense, obviously amazing. And I also like that Tony Pollard is now the lead back. I think he's going to be a lot more dynamic than Zeke. Zeke, obviously, back in his prime, incredible running back. Like, one of the most exciting that I've ever got to watch in my lifetime. Pollard, I think, though, he will be very excited for the Cowboys. He will really be a good receiving back for him, too. So, big fan of Pollard in that offense. And the defense, really. It's just the typical, whether it's Cowboys, whether it's Dak collapse, I can't see him making the Super Bowl, but deep playoffs for sure. Next is the Dolphins. So the Dolphins are one that I have really gone back and forth with as far as the top two tiers, whether it's Super Bowl contender or deep playoffs. Obviously, they have a great coach, and they design a lot of really fun plays with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You have Tua, who's put on a lot of muscle, honestly, since last year. I think trying to bulk up so he can kind of take those hits. But it's a real concern with him with his head injuries. I try not to predict. I try not to predict injuries because not predict. I try not to predict as if players are going to get hurt. But sometimes it is a reality with certain players, and Tua, I think it is a real reality that he really struggled with head injuries last year. But I'm gonna try and push that aside. As long as Tua stays healthy, that offense is the same. You bring in Jalen Ramsey on defense, and you got Bradley Chubb mid-year last year. I love it. You might even land Dalvin Cook as a running back too. I love the Dolphins, and I am going to put deep playoffs for them, but it is a matter of what's going to happen with Tua. I really hope he stays healthy, but it is definitely a scary situation. So he's going to go in deep playoffs. Next is the Eagles. They're going to go in Super Bowl contender. They did lose, honestly, a decent amount of guys on defense, but they drafted incredibly well with Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. And then you also get DeAndre Swift as your running back. So that offense only getting better, in my opinion. I don't think Miles Sanders would even do that again, like what he just did this past year, this year. Don't think he replicates that 2 years in a row, so I think it was a good idea to kind of move on from him. You get DeAndre Swift, who has a issue with injuries, but I think if he can stay healthy, he's a great running back. And even then, at that point, you still have Kenneth Gainwell, who looked pretty good last year too. So really, Eagles definitely Super Bowl contender. Next is the Falcons. All right, so the Falcons, here's the thing. This is the second NFC South team. The Buccaneers, in my opinion, are by far the worst team in there. But technically, you could put any NFC South team, except for the Buccaneers, in my opinion, in barely make/miss the playoffs because the division's so bad. But I think if I do that, it's going to make the entire tier list look very, weird with just, the Falcons and barely make/miss playoffs. Even though that's very realistic for the division, I just don't feel right about doing that. So I'm going to put them in the 5 to 7 wins. But just so everyone is aware, that division is so bad, that could very well be playoffs. Just so we're on the same page. I'm not hating. I just don't want to put them, with other teams that are actually in a tier above them just because that division's so bad. But to get to the Falcons for real, though, they get Jesse Bates in free agency. Absolutely huge addition for free safety. He's an incredible safety, and I think he's going to be a big piece of that defense, along with A.J. Terrell and Grady Jarrett. And I know they got someone else to help Grady Jarrett on the defensive line. I cannot remember what his name is. But then on offense, you obviously drop Bijan Robinson, who, pretty big draft pick right there. He's going 7th overall in fantasy drafts, even though he hasn't even touched the field yet as a rookie, which is insane. You have Desmond Ridder. You have Bijan Robinson, Tyler Allgeier's backup running back, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. The offense is looking good. I'm not going to lie. The offense is looking good. As a Panthers fan, I do not want to play the Falcons twice a year because that offense is going to be very good. I think the games against the Panthers, though, will be exciting because the Panthers do have a great defense. But Falcons, they're going to go in 5 to 7 wins-ish because I think that is what they're going to get. Could they get more because their division is so bad? For sure, but in my opinion, they're going to go in 5 to 7 wins. Next is the Giants. So the Giants are in a very tough division. I am going to put them, though, in the barely make/miss playoffs because I think they are still a tier above the teams I've listed below them. You have Daniel Jones having a career year, actually looking very good, taking care of the football. You have Saquon Barkley, who I assume is coming back, even though he's not technically signed the extension or whatever. I couldn't see him leaving at this point in the offseason. So I'm just going to say you have Saquon Barkley. And then you also got Darren Waller. Huge addition in the offseason. I like that a lot for Daniel Jones. And then also bringing back Isaiah Hodgins. He actually looked very good the second half of the year, especially in the playoffs against the Vikings. So I like that a lot too. Kayvon Thibodeau looked great at second half of the year as a rookie. So I like the Giants a lot, honestly. But I think you have a lot of high competition. So barely make/miss playoffs for sure. It's going to be tough. But still, though, I think you're not going to regress. I think you're going to stay about the same. Maybe even improve. But if you're staying the same, that's playoffs. So, can't complain too much there. Also, for any of you that are new to my tier list videos, at the end of the video, I do move teams around if I didn't like where I put them. Because like I said before, I do try and keep it very fluid as I do this. So I don't want to linger too long to decide where I put a team. So at the end, I will move things around. If you don't like something like where someone is, I might move them. I might not, but I'm just saying there is always a chance there. But next is the Jaguars. Jaguars, I'm a big fan of, and this is gonna be my biggest kind of wild card crazy pick out there. But I am gonna put the Jaguars in deep playoffs. I'm a believer in Trevor Lawrence. I'm not gonna lie. I loved what I saw from them last year. They come back down 27-0 at halftime to beat the Chargers. You go on against the Chiefs, and you honestly, you compete. You're just not good enough to beat them, but you do compete. Going into this year, though, you now have Calvin Ridley back, so that offense only gets better. Travis Etienne, you draft Tank Bigsby as the backup running back. You still have Trevor Lawrence, like I said, Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk. That offense is incredible. I mean, I absolutely love the Jaguars' offense. Defense is a little questionable at some parts, but I do like it. Trayvon Walker, you're hoping can take that big step in his second year. But Doug Peterson really turned that team around. I mean, Trevor Lawrence got a real coach because Urban Meyer was a joke of a head coach in the NFL. So I'm really happy for him, and I'm picking deep playoffs. If they can get in there, I mean, in my opinion, they win that division. They can maybe win. I mean, I think they do win one of the playoffs, maybe even steal another, and they could get the championship game. So that's kind of like my risky pick on this tier list, but I think the Jaguars could definitely get that done. Next is the Jets. So this might be kind of like a hot take. I don't know. But in my opinion, I'm going to put the Jets and barely make the playoffs. Not miss, but barely make. I think while they are going to be good with Rodgers, I don't see this like Super Bowl caliber team all of a sudden because Rodgers is incredible, but he's not like prime Rodgers. So I feel like the Jets might be getting slightly overrated. And I do feel bad for that because then it's going to be the, yearly clowning on the Jets for thinking they have a real chance. Even though now I think it's very valid to think you do have a real chance. But in my opinion, you're in a very tough conference in the AFC. And you're also in a very tough division in the AFC. You have the Bills, the Patriots, and the Dolphins all twice a year. And I think to a certain degree, you're not going to have the best record. I mean, you can't win them all. I think you'll be much better than last year. And I do think you make the playoffs, but I don't think it's going to be some 11-6 type record in my opinion. So they're going to go there. I love Garrett Wilson though. Going into second year with Rodgers as new quarterback, that's absolutely, ideal. Even though, like I said, Rodgers isn't prime Rodgers. He is leaps and bounds beyond Zach Wilson at quarterback. So that's going to be big for Garrett Wilson. You have Alan Lazard now there too. You have Breece Hall coming back off his ACL tear. Who knows what kind of year he's going to have, but still, in the future, you do have him to some degree. And that defense that literally carried you to wins last year, still there is Sauce Gardner. So I love the Jets team, but I do think they have a lot of competition around them. We'll see how they answer that call, though. So they're going to barely make the playoffs. And joining them and barely make the playoffs is the Lions. I think the Lions are going to finally make the playoffs. Unlike the AFC, they don't have as much competition with all these loaded divisions in the NFC. So I think the Lions have a real chance of winning the division first off, or just sneaking into the wild card. I think it's very possible. Jared Goff actually looked very good last year. You have Jameson Williams missing 6 games, unfortunately, after just missing some of last season. Now he gets suspended for gambling, which is not ideal. But you still have Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you lose DeAndre Swift, but you bring in David Montgomery, and you draft Jahmyr Gibbs, who evidently is going to be a big part of that offense. And then you also, I cannot remember who I was about to say. Why can I not think of his name? I couldn't think of Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones is now back in Detroit. That's who I couldn't think of. So you have him, and he's a very reliable veteran receiver too. So I like the Lions a lot. They have Aiden Hutchinson again on defense, and then you bring in Gardner Johnson from the Eagles. So you're doing everything right. You just got to put it all together. I think it's very possible. Lions can barely make playoffs. Packers are going in that tier, but they're going to go and barely miss the playoffs, in my opinion. I think this is going to be a big year for the Packers to kind of see what they have in Jordan Love as of right now. Not to say he can't improve, because I'm sure he will in the following years. This is his first year as a starter. But you are going to get a glimpse, and you will see flashes of what he can be. Obviously, you're hoping, he's going to be a great quarterback. In my opinion, I actually did an individual video on Jordan Love. I think he will be very good. But, putting it all together next year, make the playoffs, might be a little too much to ask. You have Christian Watson, though, who I think is going to be a very good receiver. Obviously, Jordan Love's #1 target. Still have Aaron Jones, still have A.J. Dillon. So you have reliable running backs if you need to kind of resort to the ground game more. And you always have a defense that's incredibly competitive. Quay Walker going into his second year looked very good last year too. So I like the Packers a lot. I just think that with the Lions in that division, with the Vikings in that division, it might kind of bump them down, at which case they need to sneak into a wild card game. And then at that point, you still have to compete with the other good but lesser teams in the division, kind of like the Giants or the Eagles or Cowboys or the Washington for that matter, all in that division. I think it's going to get very tight. I don't think the Packers are going to make that cut, so they're going to go and barely miss the playoffs. Next is the Panthers. Now, like I said for the Falcons, In my opinion, I think the Panthers could very easily make the playoffs because that division is so bad. But to be fair to all the teams in that division, I'm just going to put them in 5 to 7 wins ish. Once again, they could definitely get more than that, but I don't want to put them, up there. I just think that is kind of unfair because, obviously they're going to barely make the playoffs because their division's so bad. But the Panthers, I will say, in my opinion, even though I'm a fan, I do think they are the new best team in that division. I think their defense is the best team in that division. You have Brian Burns, you have J.C. Horn, you have Derek Brown. Jeremy Chin is now moving back from his free safety role to his hybrid safety kind of linebacker spot where he thrived his rookie year. So I like it a lot, honestly. I think their defense is going to be phenomenal. Offense is where it's a little questionable. You have Bryce Young, who in my opinion is going to be a good quarterback. I did a video on him. If you didn't see it, go check it out. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time defending that man. I already did, so go see if you want to watch that. But I think Bryce Young's going to be very good. You have Miles Sanders, who, again, like I said, I don't think is going to replicate what he just did the previous year, but I think he is still a very solid running back for them. And then you also have Terrace Marshall Jr., who, in my opinion, has major wide receiver 1 potential. He just needs more reps. He got some at the end of last year, and he proved that he can actually, really make an impact. So you have him. You draft Jonathan Mingo, who looks to be very good. And then you also have Adam Thielen and DJ Chark. So you have some wide receiver depth. It's just not the strongest in the league. But I do think you can't compete in that very sorry division that is the NFC South. Next is the Patriots. So the Patriots, they are going to go to barely... Honestly, I don't know. Barely make or miss the playoffs. I honestly have no idea. I just know they're going to go in that tier. They're going to be incredibly competitive because of their defense. You get Christian Gonzalez after trading back at 17. That is maybe the steal of the draft. I mean, I'm not sure how he fell that far. He looks like an immediate starter in camps, and I guess mini camp, training camp, in a few weeks. But I love the defense. Matthew Jordan had a big year last year too. So Patriots defense, definitely incredible. The offense is where it's a little questionable. I think this is a very big year for Mac Jones as far as on the hot seat. I guess blame is the right word to use there. I didn't want to really say blame, but I mean, yeah, I guess he does deserve some of the blame there. But the coaching definitely deserves it because, I mean, you had a defensive coordinator calling offensive plays, and it was just like screen after screen and then run on 3rd and 10 and punt the ball. That's all it was. This year, though, I think it's going to be different, hopefully. But even at that, you don't have the craziest offense. You do just have Mac Jones, who personally I don't think is the best quarterback. But again, this is his year to prove that it was the coaching holding him back. You bring in Juju, which is a pretty good addition, and you have Devontae Parker. You lose Jacoby Myers from free agency, but you have Ramondre Stevenson as your running back, who in my opinion is the highlight of that entire offense. He looks great in the receiving and the running game. So Patriots, in my opinion, are going to be the definition of a bubble team. I think they're going to be right on the line. It's going to depend on, who wins this game and who loses this game at the end of the year, and if they can win to get in. I think it's going to be very, very close. So either way for them. Next is the Raiders. The Raiders are going to go in 5 to 7 wins, in my opinion. I think definitely the higher tier of that, like maybe 7 or 6. But you have Jimmy Garoppolo, and I don't think he's much of a upgrade from Derek Carr. I think they're pretty similar. And even at that, you have Devontae Adams, and he's going to have to carry that entire offense because you have him, you have Josh Jacobs. That's, in my opinion, that's about it. You have Jacoby Myers, who's a great wide receiver too, but not enough to really, light it up constantly. So I think the Raiders offense will slightly be more efficient, but I don't think they have the defense to get stops. They'll need to stay in games, and I think 5 to 7 wins where they belong. They're in a tough division at that too. They got to play the Chiefs and Chargers and Broncos. So they're going to 5 to 7 wins. The Rams are going to go in Caleb Williams. I think the Rams are honestly going to be very, very bad. I talked about this in, I cannot remember what, I think the defensive tier list video I did, because they have Aaron Donald. That's really it on defense. They don't have Jalen Ramsey anymore. So it's looking very tough for the Rams. You do have Matthew Stafford back and healthy, and you have Cooper Kupp. But man, other than that, Cam Akers, I guess, like it's rough for LA. I think it's going to be a very hard year for him. So they're going to go in the Caleb Williams tier. Next is the Ravens. The Ravens are going to go and barely make/miss the playoffs. Not because I guess technically they could be deep playoffs, but since it's the same division, that's a little questionable. So I'm going to leave them there because they'll have, because in my opinion, the Bengals win the division, so the Ravens would be second, which I think they do barely make the playoffs as a wild card team. But I don't know if they win many games in the playoffs because the AFC is so unbelievably competitive. I don't think the Ravens are one of the top teams in that kind of competition tier in the AFC. So I don't know. You got to think if like the Bengals, Bills, Chiefs, Dolphins, and Jaguars are all in there, and we'll say the Chiefs, get a bye. I mean, those four teams then, Bengals, Bills, Dolphins, and Jaguars, if they play any of those teams, I don't even know if they win that, to be honest. But that's just me. Really make the playoffs. I think definitely a bigger year for them. And I talked about this once again in my Lamar Jackson video. You have a new offensive coordinator. Going to be passing the ball more. Lamar has probably the best weapons he's had in his entire career now. You have Mark Andrews. You draft Zay Flowers. You have Rashad Bateman back and healthy. You have J.K. Dobbins. I mean, you have a phenomenal offense. You have, honestly, like that, a phenomenal defense, too. I just think that's just so competitive. And Lamar, quite frankly, does not have the best playoff track history. So I think he's a great quarterback, and I think they will have a good year. As far as the playoffs go, I don't know. I think they get in, but I'm not sure how far they go after that. Next is Washington. Now, I like Washington a lot. You have Sam Howell, who I'm going to do a player prediction video on to finish the series, actually. And he's in a pretty good situation. You have to sit out a year, develop. He got in and even looked very promising then. And now he's coming in an offense where he has Terry McLaurin, he has Curtis Samuel, John Dotson, Brian Robinson as running back. I mean, that's very solid. You draft Emmanuel Forbes as your corner, who I think is going to help out the defense a lot. You hopefully have Chase Young coming back in his actual, full 100% healthy form. You could have a great year, but the only thing, in my opinion, going against Washington is their division. You got to play the Cowboys. You got to play the Giants, who I think is going to be more their skill level, and then the Eagles. I mean, that is... You got to think, best case scenario, in my opinion, they get third, and you got to try and fight for a wild card spot, which in the NFC, that is definitely possible. It's not as competitive as the AFC, but that's going to be tough. So I'm honestly going to put them in 5 to 7 wins because spoiler alert, I guess, for the team prediction video, I see them getting around 7 wins. So I'm going to put them in there, but that's definitely the high end 5 to 7 wins. But I just think they have a lot going against them as far as their competition. I think they will be good, but not putting it all together in this coming season, in my opinion. Next is the Saints. And also, I'm going to do something here because I think, in my opinion, it is between the Panthers and the Falcons to win the division. So I'm going to move them up here, and I'm going to put the Saints in 5 to 7 wins. That's where I think they're going to go. And then Buccaneers are going to stay in Caleb Williams. That way, we do have teams from that division in barely make/miss the playoffs. And I do think it's going to be between the Panthers and the Falcons to get in, which I like a bit more now. So anyway, Saints, they're going to go to 5 to 7 wins. The Saints have a pretty good defense. They always seem to be very competitive that way. But, it's definitely kind of questionable now on offense because you have Alvin Kamara with his trial coming at some point, and I guess he can keep playing until then. I'm honestly not very sure. You have Derek Carr, though, who, look, division rival jokes aside, I think it was very mind-boggling to go get him, considering you shut him out last year. As the Saints, you held this guy to 0 points on the Raiders, and then thought to yourself, that's the guy we need. Come on. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I mean, I know it's a funny way of looking at it, but Derek Carr is a pretty average to below average QB. And that was not the answer, in my opinion. It's just kind of putting a slight Band-Aid over the wound that is needing a serious quarterback. So maybe he makes it somewhat viable for a year or so, but Derek Carr is not going to be the long-time answer there. And I'm sure the Saints know that, but that was just not the move, in my opinion. But the big thing, and I had done a video on this player, I think at the very beginning of my player prediction series, is Chris Olave. I absolutely love Chris Olave. I think he has serious top 10 wide receiver potential at some point. He looked phenomenal last year with Andy Dalton throwing him the ball. Now you have Derek Carr, who is an upgrade over Andy Dalton, and Chris Olave doesn't have much competition to take targets away from him. I think he's going to be absolutely incredible. So I love Chris Olave. I had to end on a bright note with all I said about the Saints, but I like Olave a lot. So he's definitely going there. Or I guess Saints are definitely going there. Next, the Seahawks. The Seahawks are going to go in barely make/miss the playoffs, I think. The Seahawks are, well, actually, I could put them in. No, I don't know. I was thinking about deep playoffs, but 49ers and Eagles and even the Cowboys at that, I don't think so. I'm going to leave them in barely make/miss the playoffs. So Seahawks are going to stay there. You have Geno Smith. You have Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. You have Kenneth Walker. You draft Zach Charbonnet. You draft Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State. I mean, you have an incredible offense. I love that offense. You already have Tyreek Woolen and Kobe Bryant as your corners on defense. You bring back Bobby Wagner, and then you go and you draft Devin Witherspoon, who I think was honestly a very good pick. Jalen Carter was there, but Devin Witherspoon's still a good pick. So the Seahawks are going to go and barely make the playoffs because I think last year they made it, and it was kind of clear they just weren't quite ready. They had a very, above their ceiling last year. I mean, I think people were projecting them to get like bottom of the league, and they made the playoffs. So I am going to put them back in the barely make the playoffs just because I don't see them making a deep playoff push. If you're thinking NFC Championship, I feel like that's just not going to happen. And looking at the teams in here, I just I don't know. I can't really see that happening. But I might move some things around here when I'm done with these next few teams. Next is the Steelers. Now, the Steelers are going to go and barely make/miss the playoffs. In my opinion, they barely missed the playoffs because, again, a lot of competition. I already have the Browns in there. You have Kenny Pickett, who I think improved a lot over last year, and I think he is in for a pretty good year this year. Najee Harris back and healthy with his foot issue, I would assume healed by now. George Pickens looked great. You have Deontay Johnson, who looked great, except for he couldn't find the end zone, which I think is definitely an anomaly. I couldn't say that for a second. Pat Freiermuth looked great too. So Steelers are going to go there, but again, they're in a very, very tough division to where, as incredible as that defense is with T.J. Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick and all, and then you draft Joey Porter, as great as it is, that's just the level the AFC is on, and I don't think the Steelers are there quite yet. But give it 2 years, and I think they're in that deep playoff push. I'm serious. I don't know. Maybe it's a hot take, but I do think they get there in a few years. But for right now, barely make the playoffs or barely miss the playoffs where they belong. Next is the Texans. Now, I'm not going to hate the Texans at all, honestly. They're going to go in 5-7 wins. Look, they're not going to... You made some great moves, but you're not going to go all of a sudden win the division and make the playoffs, in my opinion. That's just not realistic. But you draft C.J. Stroud. I think it's a great pick. You trade back-to-back picks to get Will Anderson. I mean, you draft Derek Stingley last year. You have a new defensive-minded head coach. It is all coming together for the Texans. I will say that. I think it really is all coming together. You're making a lot of the right moves, but once again, kind of like for the Bears, who's also in that tier, it just doesn't all happen overnight. It doesn't happen in one season. So I think they're going to stay in that 5-7 wins tier. But Texans, definitely, though, going to take a big step from last year for sure. Next is the Titans. The Titans, I think, are going to go in the 5-7 wins, honestly. I don't love the Titans. Well, I don't know. They could go and barely miss the playoffs, though. No, okay, I'm gonna keep them there. I'm gonna keep them there at like 7 wins. Derrick Henry is, at some point, you would think Father Time is going to win because Derrick Henry is just defying all the kind of circumstances around running backs. Usually they slow down at this age. Oh, Derrick Henry's too big. His body's going to give up on this age. Not happening. But with the amount of workload that he does have to kind of carry every single year, he seriously, like, jokes aside, he can't keep doing that year after year. And you have to have other weapons, and I don't think you do. You have Treylon Burks, who looks good. But other than that, I don't know who else you really have. And the defense is very questionable as well. I don't like the Titans very much going into this year. I think it's going to be around the 7-win mark in that tier. And next is the Vikings. Now, the Vikings are going to go in the deep playoffs tier. I think the Vikings' offense is Super Bowl level, and their defense is, like, barely missed the playoffs level. I don't like the Vikings' defense at all. But you do still have Harrison Smith. You have Marcus Davenport. You have Danielle Hunter. And then you also got Byron Murphy, which is honestly pretty solid. But it was very clear in that game against the Giants last year that defense needed some work. And they are working on it. Again, though, not all in 1 year. I still think their offense is good enough to potentially make a deep playoff push, but I guess we'll have to see. So this is how the tier list is right now. Now, looking over this, I feel like I have too many teams in the barely make/miss the playoffs. So I kind of want to move, let's see. I think I'll move the Ravens up. I'll move the Ravens up to deep playoff push just because if they get in, while I said that I don't know if they could beat the Dolphins, Jaguars, or Bills or Bengals for that matter, they almost beat the Bengals last year. So if they do happen to do that, I could see them going on a run. So I'm going to put the Ravens in deep playoffs. Other than that, I kind of like actually where the rest of these teams are because I don't see any of them making a big push, but I don't think any of them in that tier are like 5-7 wins level. So I'm going to keep it just like that. And that's going to do it for version 1 of ranking every single team going into this coming NFL season. If you guys did enjoy, be sure to hit the subscribe button for all kinds of more NFL tier list videos, along with NFL quiz videos, week picks when the season is going on, along with all kinds of NFL news that happens throughout the year. We also do NFL like a player prediction series. Going through the name for a second, and then once we're done with that, it's gonna be an individual team prediction series. We're gonna go more in depth than what I just did, going over more kind of coaching stuff, player stuff, competition stuff, and then actually giving them a real record and kind of following that throughout the year. So we'll be doing that. Also, if you happen to like Madden, I do Madden videos. Madden 24 is right around the corner, about a month and a week, I think, from now, something like that. So we'll do a No Money Spent series with that, gameplays, pack openings, new pro and content news, all that kind of stuff. So it's always football on the channel one way or another. So if that sounds interesting to you guys, be sure to hit the subscribe button. I would really appreciate that. Let me know down below any teams you disagree with, because obviously if I rank your team down below, I'm sure you don't agree with that, and that's fine. So just let me down below any teams you disagree with. But thank you guys for watching. I do really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.